killed JONBENET?
It's certainly possible that an intruder was responsible for the murder, but I don't think that the DNA evidence proves it.
The only way I can describe this evidence is uninformative. It really is, it's not dispositive of the presence of a perpetrator. There is foreign DNA, but that foreign DNA can easily be accounted for by a number of innocent mechanisms.
One of those innocent mechanisms could be if JONBENET's clothing was taken off and she was redressed, and there's a strong theory in terms of that because what she was wearing was the wrong size. And in the coroner's report, it appeared that, I think it was mentioned that fluid was diluted. It did appear that she had been wiped down. So if clothing is taken off, put it on the floor, and then redressed, and in the carpet is male DNA, then that DNA could easily be in multiple places, which is just how touch DNA can transfer. And we do know JONBENET was placed on a carpet in numerous places in the Ramsey home. So I guess it's not snap of the fingers and...
So easy. So simple.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't breathe. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Meanwhile, and this is where it gets really interesting, the same grand juror briefly laid out several reasons central to why the grand jury voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey. Number one, no evidence of an intruder, no footprints in the snow, no physical evidence left behind. And you would imagine that it includes the DNA as part of that. No absolute proof of physical evidence left behind. That foreign DNA could belong to anyone. Well, so can you see that even the Boulder grand jury accepted that there was snow and no footprints in the snow? Who on earth would say on a blue sky day that it didn't rain? And so in the same way, who on earth would say there was no footprints in the snow if there was no snow? Obviously there was snow at the time that they saw it, at dawn. Again, despite what Lou Smith says, the story we hear over and over and over again is different when the grand jurors are allowed to speak. Then let's go to another of those several reasons central to why the grand jury voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey. Number two, the location of the body in a hard-to-find room. That was also confirmed by the housekeeper. Number three, the ransom note written in the house with weird personal information and never a ransom call. How can the ransom note be legitimate if no one calls to collect the ransom? And if JONBENET isn't taken to begin with, JONBENET has been in the house the whole time. And then number four, the juror, after rattling off these points, I'm not telling you these points, this is what the grand jurors said, why they thought based on the evidence that was led over 13 months, why they thought the Ramseys were guilty. And then he posed a question. And this is a really important question. Let's have a loud booming noise before we deal with it. The juror, after rattling off these points, then posed a question, a rhetorical question. How much evidence is there really that this was a sex crime? And I don't think he's saying that sex was irrelevant, but how much evidence of this intruder crime, the sexual predator crime, is there compared to the counter possibility? Now, I do believe there was sexual interference, but it is really interesting that after hearing all the evidence we are not privy to, that the grand jury seemed to, in a sense, minimize the sexual aspect, not rule it out, but certainly not rule it in as the work of some depraved sexual predator that you hear when you hear Lou Smith speaking, that you hear when you hear Team Ramsey speaking. This monster you hear about endlessly from the Ramsey playbook. And then there's also this. The killer was in the house for hours between the blow to the head and the strangling. Now, there is a theory that a significant length of time passed between the head wound and the ligature. And I believe in this area that the grand jury got it wrong. It's always dangerous and tricky to differ from a medical examiner, but in this case I do think it's justified. To differ, I mean. I could be wrong, but I suspect the medical examiner either based this theory on a police theory or vice versa. And we know, or we ought to know, that the police theory that Patsy killed JonBenet is mistaken. We also know from what the housekeeper said that she firmly believed the grand jury were going to indict Patsy, which of course they did, just not for the crime she imagined. I don't know exactly what the science is, but I imagine that there could be a certain amount of post-mortem swelling on the brain which may have clouded the coroner's findings, and just some preliminary checking in this area does seem to bear this out. Yes, it is possible for the brain to swell after death. I'm not going to take it further than that, but I do want to close with a seldom seen clip of John Ramsey speaking at Lou Smith's funeral. I think when a suspect or victim and a detective become friends like this in this way, can you really expect a reliable or credible investigation? Because all investigations need to remain independent.
It's very much an honor to be here to celebrate Lou Smith's life and to share my thoughts with you. I'm John Ramsey. I had the opportunity to visit Lou a week before he died. Remarkably, during that time together, Lou talked a lot about the case. He hadn't given up. He never gave up.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to check the recommendations in the outro, and I'll see you guys next time.